Mark Salway, and I run the non-profit advisory unit here at Moore Kingston Smith. And my team are focused on impact, we're focused on finance, we're focused on fundraising, and we bring that all together in strategy. And as we've been doing our work recently, we found that actually there's a gap about bringing this all together in some type of tool that enables you to look at your charity and see where you might need to prioritize for the future. I think that's incredibly important in the post-COVID environment. So what is Nonprofit 360? Well, it's a tool that enables you to look holistically at, for example, all of the different components of your organization and identify where you might need to put effort or where you're doing well. So, I don't know, financial sustainability, fundraising, HR, strategy development and the implementation of strategy, and you know, whether you actually create impact and change for those you exist for by impact. It is something that we're quite proud of. We've developed it to be used and also to promote good conversations between trustees and management. So shall we have a look at the tool and see what you think? So what is the 360 tool? Well, it's 9 different areas of focus that you can ask yourselves questions around to identify where you might need to actually have focus or prioritize for the future. It enables trustees and management to ask good questions around each of these different segments and see if it needs to have a little bit more effort, let's say, for the future. So it starts with vision, mission, and objectives. Are you clear about those you help? Are you clear about the way that you do that and your place in the world? And then we ask questions about strategy development. Are you good at developing strategy? Do you have the right tools? Do you have the right people around the table? And implementation, are you able to see the KPIs? Are you clear on the risks? And do you have an implementation plan to drive that forward? Governance, of course, is part of that. This is the 3rd segment round. And, governance is obviously about the fiduciary duties of trustees and management. But more than that, are you meeting the needs, and are you being generative and having new ideas and being innovative for the future? Then we go into delivery operations, making sure that in terms of compliance, the work that you do is good enough. Before we come to impact at the bottom of the circle, are you able to articulate the change you bring about for stakeholders and those you work for? And can you also tell the good and the bad, the positive impact and the negative impact? Income generation is next, including fundraising. How do we raise our money? And then that leads us on to finances and financial sustainability and funding. And also the management information we need to run the organization effectively. And then the 360 tool is finished off by people, HR, talent management, making sure you've got the infrastructure around your people and resources to drive forward your ambition. So that's what 360 is. And the outcome of this can be pretty profound, because if you can identify areas that you're weak on, you can focus on that for the future. And that will be pretty powerful, especially in the post-COVID environment.
So how exactly does the 360 work? Well, for each of the 9 areas that we've talked about, there will be a number of statements associated with it. We've specifically selected statements that pick on material issues that indicate strengths or weaknesses in your strategic approach. And in total, across the whole tool, there are 36 statements associated with these 9 areas. So what you need to do in order to complete the tool is to go through each of these 36 statements and to give yourselves a grade from 0 to 10. Here, 0 means no or very poor practice, and 10 means excellent in every respect. And we're going to go through an example just now. So here's what the tool actually looks like. And as you can see, we're in a SurveyMonkey tab here. So this should come up once you click on the SurveyMonkey link. The very first question is about contact details and so on. So once you've completed that, click next and you'll move on to this page here. So this is looking, as you can see, at the very first area here. And we have vision, mission and objectives as this initial area. And underneath you can see there are these 3 different statements. And what you need to do is grade yourselves from 0 to 10 on each of these statements. So if we just start from scratch here, this very first statement is to do with having a clear purpose and objectives. We are clear about why we exist and our purpose, our vision, mission, objectives, and values. And here you would be able to click and drag, hold this slider, and drag it across to reflect how you would think about your organization, how you would score it. Remember, the focus for this tool and for these discussions is on where you are currently and not where you want to be or where you expect to be in the future. So we're really thinking about the here and now as we're considering each of these statements. So for this first one, I might think, well, we are clear about why we exist and our purpose. We're very good on our vision and mission, but the values and objectives are a little more hazy. So we might say that we're about 6 here, and you can just drag the slider until 6 appears in this box on the right-hand side. You can also type into this box the score that you would like to give yourself. So I might actually decide I want to say 8, and then if you just type it in, press tab, and the slider will jump to where you want it to be. So in order to progress, I would go through each of these statements and have a think or have a discussion, if you're doing it with other people, about where you would grade yourselves. Some might be really positive, some might be negative, you might be more average across an area. And once you're happy with all of these statements, you would click next and go on to the next page. After you've filled out all 36 statements and you have graded yourself, you would then be able to submit the survey and we would have access to the results.
Hi, I'm Dan Fletcher and I work with Mark and Helen in the non-profit team at Moore Kingston Smith. Mark and Helen have explained to you already about how non-profit 360 works and also how you enter the results, enter your findings into the questionnaire. What I'm going to do now is explain a bit about how we process the final results, the figures that come from you and your fellow trustees and staff members, in order to feed back a report to you, which will explain and give an overview of your own organisation's approach to strategy and areas where you can potentially make improvements.
Once you've completed the questionnaire, you will have answered 36 questions and scored them between 0 and 10. We then look at the average for those questions in each area and plot the average on this spider diagram. We've assumed that a 7 on average for each area is good, and anything above that is in the pale blue area, and that shows that it's an area that doesn't need a lot of attention, that you've managed to do well with your strategy and your organization is running perfectly smoothly. Areas that are below 7, and particularly a long way below 7, and in the mid blue area, need further work, and those are areas that we would particularly dwell on in our report that comes to you as a result of the Nonprofit 360 tool. You can see on this spider diagram, for example, that delivery, operations and compliance are scoring a high score and don't need much further attention, whereas income generation and fundraising and finance are coming up with low scores, and so those do need more attention and more work on them. In addition to the spider diagram, we also plot the variance against the average scores for each area. So for example, strategy implementation has a large variance between 7 and 1, but a reasonable average of 5. This shows that for the different number of questions that there are in the strategy implementation area, that those have ranged between answering 1 and answering 7. A 7 would be good, whereas a 1 would be quite poor. And most of the questions were towards the good rather than towards the poor, which is why the average is averaging out at 5. However, for some other areas like governance, that variance is only between 5 and 7, and of the 3 to 4 questions in governance, most of those were answering in the high end of that, which has made the average at about 6.5. but the averages and the variance are fairly consistent with each other. There's not a huge variance there, and so we could feel confident that the way those questions are being answered is consistent across the board. Whereas with the strategy implementation, there's possibly just one area within that, or one aspect within that area, which needs particular attention and particular work. And when we produce our report at the end of the Nonprofit 360 analysis, we will highlight the particular areas that need additional work, areas that you can apply some more attention to, and we will give some recommendations and an idea of where you can find some resources in order to support your organization to create improvements in those areas where you need it. So I hope that our explanations of how Nonprofit 360 works and the value that it can bring to your organization have been helpful. If you have any further questions, then do talk to us. You can get in contact with the team in lots of different ways, by email, on our website. We have a Twitter handle, and you can always pick up the telephone and give us a call as well. We're very pleased to talk to you and to find out what you think about Nonprofit 360 and to answer any of your questions. Thank you very much.